Hey, and welcome back to the basement. Today, a continuation of our video series on configuring Klipper for the Voron 2.4R2 Ultimate build. These are little snippets of things that you can do to configure your Klipper, little specific things, whether it be camera, Neopixels, the GUI, macros, things like that in general. Today, specifically, we are working on our cameras and our Neopixels, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. So at this point, you should be relatively familiar with the GUI. You should kind of know what's out here. I think we used the console a couple times here and there just to play around with. And I do have a camera that's running right here, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that. Further to that, I'm going to show you how to have more than one camera on your printer, because you may have a nozzle camera and a top down, or you might have a top down and a front facing. And Crowsnest allows us to do that. Now, if you went ahead and you installed Klipper using the method that I showed you, Crowsnest should automatically installed. If you did not, you want to know how to install Crowsnest, go ahead and drop me a note down below and I will lead you in the right direction. Maybe we'll do a video on that at some point. But to keep things short and sweet and to the point, let's go ahead and jump right into it. First thing we're going to do is we're going to click on the gears over here to the top right. And basically we have interface settings right here. Our interface settings, if we scroll down, or scroll up, scroll down, one of the things we're going to see here at the very bottom are webcams. Okay, and you'll see here I have two. Let's act like those don't exist right now. And let's go right into crowsnest.config. Okay. So this is the configuration file for Crowsnest, and it's kind of self-explanatory, but it's not 100%. It's lacking a couple things. First things first, it's telling us where the log file is, which is very important. We want to know where that is because we may need that when we're trying to find where our cameras are actually hooked up to, basically what USB, what dev it is in the Raspberry Pi. Log level at verbose is fine. It's kind of in between the middle. And delete log false, so that's on a restart. If you do have a delete log on restart, then you're going to lose some information. Once you get everything set up, it's probably fine to go ahead and hit that and have it delete the log every time. Excuse me. So here we have in our first section, and mind you there are two, is Cam 1. This is pre-populated in any instance of Crowsnest. So we have Cam 1, that's the name of the camera. We have the mode, which is Motion JPEG, or MJPEG. You can also do RTSP right here, is if it's a web-based video stream that you want to have. You could use that with a modified Wisecam or pretty much any webcam you could have around, even one that's not necessarily plugged directly into your Raspberry Pi. Here's the port. Port is dictated by the information up here. So basically Cam 1 or cam without any number, Cam 2, Cam 3, Cam 4. Here we have device. Device is dictated by the log file, which we'll look at in a second. It kind of tells you where a device is hooked up. You can't always assume that video 0 is going to be where your device is. It could be at video 2. It could be at another location. Resolution, again, kind of easy to figure out there. The higher the resolution, the more processing power it's going to take on your Raspberry Pi or whatever you're using. So you want to kind of make that as high as you can, but not make it too high, because if you do, you're probably going to wind up with some glitchy video. For instance, here, this particular camera is a 4K camera, but I'm running it at 1080. Max frames per second, again, kind of goes in the same line as your max resolution. For a nozzle cam, which is what this is, I'd rather have the higher speed, the higher max FPS, frames per second, than I do the actual resolution. 1080p is fine for that. So that's the way it's set up. Now, if you have a second camera, or if you have more than one camera, you could have 3 or 4 cameras if you really want to. I wouldn't necessarily suggest it, but you could. All you need to do is copy this section right here. We'll go ahead and we'll hit Control-C. After we highlight it with the mouse, I'm going to come to the end here. I'm going to enter, then Control-V to paste it. As you can see, I just went ahead and pasted it again. Now, the biggest difference here is we need to change the camera number for the camera that we're adding. And the first thing we're going to run into is knowing what the video is. Okay, so this is the big thing. This is how Crowsnest knows what port to put that video out on. So if that video is going to be, for instance, webcam 3, we look up here, webcam 3 is on port 8082. We make that port 8082. But what about this dev video 0 thing? Where do we get that? Well, I'm going to close this. I'm not going to save it because I don't want to modify what I have. I don't need a third camera on there. So I'm going to not save. Okay. And we're going to go back over here to machine, and we're going to go in up here, machine, and over here to our root, and we're going to go to logs, and we're going to go to Crowsnest log. Now my log's a little long, but if you scroll towards the bottom, you'll see devices. And you'll see here, I have a cam 1 and cam 2, a video 0 and video 2. Okay. Now you'll see those in other places too. I think if you look up, again, my log file is pretty big here, but you'll see in different places, like right here, this is specifically what the camera is. This one is an HD Pro webcam, a C920. It is on Dev Video 2. So it tells me right there, Dev Video 2 for the C920, okay? If I continue to scroll through here, I'll also see that 4K camera, but what we're interested mostly here is this right here, this little portion that says Dev Video 2. That's where we find that out, okay? So I'm gonna leave this area right here. I'm gonna go back into my Crowsnest. I'm gonna go back to edit it. And I'm going to go ahead and, it's already done here, but we basically put that video in here to show that, okay? Once we've done that, we're going to assign it a port. And once we've assigned it a port, we're basically good to go out of this particular configuration file. So I'm gonna hit save and restart. In my case, I'm gonna hit close, or I'm gonna exit out of it. I don't need to save and restart. And let's assume we restarted the whole printer. Let's start back at square one here. I'm gonna then come again, back over to the cogs, webcam, and then right here, I'm going to go to edit. So this top-down camera, that C920, was denoted as webcam 2, which is what's written here. Now this is the part that you kind of miss everywhere. There's not a lot of information about specifically where to denote that that is webcam 2. You know, when I was first trying to set this up, I was like, well, is it stream 2, stream 1, stream 3? Is it a different stream on the same unit? But the answer is no. You modify webcam right here on this line. So you have URL snapshot, and you have URL stream. So webcam 2 here, webcam 2 here. I'm gonna leave everything the same. Target frames per second. You can modify that. You can go higher than what you have in your Crowsnest log, your Crowsnest config, but you're never really going to get more than what's in there. So basically, if you want to match those numbers, you're probably best off. Right here, you're going to want to name the camera. This is my top-down camera. It's also my Logitech C920. So I don't need to update it because it's already there. But let's take a look at the other camera. You notice on this one, this is the primary camera on the printer. This is the one that is basically in Dev Video 1 or 0. And this one, because of that, does not require a number after it. So it's denoted as just webcam. Okay, webcam here, they're both there, it's good. This one I have turned on to 50 frames per second. Let's go ahead and make it 60. You'll see instantly this turns up right over here. If I change it to 30, it'll drop down over here. Let's leave it at 30 for now. I'm gonna update that webcam, and I'm gonna close out of that. So now that I have my webcam over here, there are different options I have. I can either pick a specific camera, or I can hit all, which means it will show me all the cameras it's able to. It'll also try to provide the most frames per second possible based on how much processing power your particular computer has. So, what else can we do? Well, that's a good question. One of the first things I would do is I'd go back into your cogs, go into your UI settings, and make sure you enable show webcam and navigation. If you look over here to the far left, I have a webcam navigation. If I turn that off, which is default, it goes away. If you have that turned on, what that allows you to do is basically select webcam, and you get a full page or a full screen of that webcam. So now you get a full view of everything on that webcam, which is kind of nice. Over here again, I can go all, have a side by each. I go top down and go 4K. 4K doesn't look like anything right now because it's a white sheet of paper. So let's go back to all. Let's go back to the dashboard. And in a nutshell, I know it was quick, but that's cameras. All right, so 10 minutes in, let's look at Neopixels. Neopixels is gonna be a little bit more complicated, but a lot more fun, I guess. Cameras are fun and all, but Neopixels are kind of fun to play with, especially if you want to add some artistic flair to your printer. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over to my machine, I'm going to look at my printer.config. So we're going to get out of the logs, we're going to config, and we're going to go to our printer. We've been in this file a couple times now, and basically this is our printer itself, the configuration for the printer. What's not in here currently is anything about the Neopixels. I have and include neo.cfg file. Depending on what you want for a file name, that could be, you know, leds.cfg or whatever you have, okay? And the reason I tell you that is because there is a readily available stealth burner leds.cfg file. So if you just want to go out and have kind of a pre-made configuration for your Neopixels on your toolhead for your stealth burner, this config file will do that for you. Basically, you go through, you give it some information, and we'll talk about that information in my other file that's way more simple. And I think you should start simple, but this is a good thing to implement after the fact. I think you should know how it works before you implement it, so we'll get into my file in a minute. But this basically will go through, and you can do a bunch of things like have different states for different, you know, however hot your tool head is, or however hot your extruder is, your nozzle. You can have states on your startup, you know, your leveling, basically your gantry. You can have little tiny things for almost everything. And a lot of these are variable statements, so they're relatively complicated if you don't know what you're looking at. So this is a file you can get, it's readily available. If you do a search for stealth burner _leds.cfg, you'll find it on the Git. It's on the Voron Git. There's a lot of good information here at the top. It tells you how to implement this stuff, but doesn't really tell you much about how it works. So I'm going to close it, and I'm going to open up a file I made. The file I made is called neo.cfg, and if you recall, it is right here, neo.cfg. So I'm including neo.cfg in my printer.cfg. Neo.cfg is a simple file, and it's so simple that I wrote it. So let's look at this file because it's simple, okay? I mean, again, we could look at something really complicated like that stealth burner file, but there's a lot going on there. A lot of things that you probably don't really care to know, a lot of things that you may feel overwhelmed with. So let's start simple. So we have a neo.config, and first thing we need to do is we need to name our Neopixel. So our Neopixel is called Neo. We need to define what pin is used for the RGBW. In our particular case, it's a PB0. That is the RGB pin on the octopus. If you look at the diagram for the printer, you'll see that there's an RGB pin that's basically called out in the manual. So we're hooked up to that pin to provide the information to power the pins. Next thing's next. So right here, chain count. So what chain count is how many Neopixels are connected in series from the first one. So if you have 1, it's 1. If you have 2, it's 2. If you have 3, it's 3. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In our particular case, we have 1 in the front, just like most stealth burners, and we have 2 in the bottom that kind of light up the nozzle. So we have 3 total. Color order, we have green, red, blue, and white. So some of them do not have white, but most of them do. So green, red, blue, white. Now, I will make note of this. If for some reason, when you put colors in, they don't come what you think they are, your order is probably not correct based on your Neopixel. That can happen, and all you need to do is basically change this right here to basically reassign in what order those pixels or those LEDs are on your Neopixel. So first thing we have here is initial coloring. So basically, as soon as it loads this file, what does it do with the Neopixels? Right now, they're off. So let's go ahead and look at what that looks like. Neopixels are off. So there is our printer. Let's go to the top down right here. And we're seeing nothing. So if I restart the printer right now, we're not going to notice anything. It's basically going to restart itself just like that. No LEDs or anything like that. Okay. But now that we have that information in there, that we have Neopixels and we have, defined a port for them, what we will wind up with is this right here, this Neo. So I'm going to collapse these just so we can have that higher. And the first thing I'm going to show you is this color wheel. So this is fun to play with. It doesn't really do a lot for you, but it's kind of fun to play with. First thing we'll do is we'll turn up the white. Okay. Now I know it's a little hard to see, but let's switch over to this camera right here. Right now all of our LEDs are in white. So that particular control only allows you to control everything in a single flush. So everything is all connected, same color on everything. So if I take that and as opposed to white, I turn off the white and I turn on the other LEDs, I have them all on now and they're all set to 1 or full up. So when you mix all of your RGB, you're going to get white light. If I then incorporate the other white LEDs, you get even brighter white light. So super bright white. I'm going to turn off the white again. I just have the RGBs. And now I'm going to take my color wheel and go over to green. I'm going to take and go to red. I'm going to take it and go to blue. And I will take it and go to pinkish purple. All those colors are the right colors, yellow as well. So I know my RGBs are in the proper order. Okay, let's go back to the screen. So this is the color wheel I've been playing with. And again, I've just been moving this around to different locations and it changes the color on the printer. This is being white, this being your on and off for your colors, and that's your luminosity of the actual LEDs. With the exception of white, which is right here. So right now everything on full bore, just like that. Close it up, and there we go. If I go to my 4K, you'll see it like that. Now if we go here, and we do this, and we go say red, and you get like a red. Looks kind of orange, but it's red. Okay. Now that we have that, let's go back into our machine, let's go back into our NeoConfig, and let's look at what we have. So now you know how to add those to your printer, and you know how to play around with them. They're in the GUI. What's the use of that? What can you do with that, okay? What is the most simplistic way that we can utilize that to do something that we want to do? No variables or anything like that. We're just going to do this. This is a simple video. This is for starting out. So we can call out a macro. Call out a macro, and you got to, your formatting needs to be dead on. There are some deviations. Your spacing can be more or less, but everything has to be spaced out the same amount. So in this particular macro, we're calling it BIB, build a basement. And then we're going to call it, this is the G code. We'll put a colon after that. Okay. So this is the variable line. This is the only complicated line we have in here. And basically what this allows us to do is define an amount of times that it will run through this particular step of colors. That's defined as count, and default is 10. Okay, so we have that here. And then we have an N for at the end of it. Those are important. If you have this line, you need to have an N for, because it needs to know when to stop. If you don't have there, it won't work properly. So anything that's in between here is able to run as many times as you want to based on what the count is that you give it. You can give that count either as a command in a console or in your actual printer config file in a specific location, so you can have it do something at a specific time. So your call out to do that would be your call out to your BIB. It's pretty simple. So what is this doing? Let's look at these lines real quick, and let's see here. We're getting almost close to 20 minutes, so we'll hammer through this really quick, but I think you'll get it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to set LED. That's what we're doing. The LED that we're setting is Neo. Okay, we already defined that the Neopixels we have are called Neo, so we're defining that one. Now index is basically part of the chain count. 1, 2, 3. So here we have index 1, 2, and 3. They're doing different things at different times, but they're all called out here. So 1 on my particular instance is the logo on the front of my stealth burner. 2 is the one on the left bottom. 3 is the one on the bottom right. So in this particular first line, what we're doing is we're calling that our index 1, the logo LED, switches to white. Transmit can be either 0, left out, or 1. If it is 0, it means it does not send it until it sees a 1. So on this one, we're just going to send it right away. If we didn't want to send it right away, we could hit a 0 here and it wouldn't send it until it gets to this one. You can use that so that things turn on at the same time. So Neopixel, right here, index 1, The only thing that's coming on is white. On our Neopixel 2, or Index 2, we have it going blue, then sending that. So basically, almost at the same time, it's going white on the front one and then turning red. G4, P50. Simple command, it's a hold, it's a stop, it's a pause. So basically, the G4 is calling out that we're pausing for 50, is it milliseconds? Anyway, 100 milliseconds, 200 milliseconds, 500 milliseconds, 1000 being a whole second. So a very short period of time, we are pausing here, 50 milliseconds. Once it pauses 50 milliseconds, what is it doing? It's going back to that 2 and is turning it off. And then pausing another 50 milliseconds. And then it's going back to that number 2 again. It's turning it blue again. What is that accomplishing? It's flashing it. So basically we're flashing the blue Neopixel on the bottom left of our printer. So this goes on, it does a bunch of other stuff. You know, there are reds here, there are blues here, there are whites here, and everything gets transitioned back to off, and there's different timing here. The outcome? Well, let's take a look. So let's go to macros. And here's our macro, our BIB macro. And let's switch camera views real quick. I think this will be best. So right now it's red, but if we hit the BIB and we have it do a count of say 20 and I send it, there we go, our police lights. You can see them flashing, they're switching from white to blue, red, blue, back and forth. Pretty simple, kind of cool, and just something you could do. Now, if you had a lot more Neopixels, you could do a lot crazier things. If you just wanted to turn on, you can do that. If you want the flash, you can do that. You get to pick the color. It's pretty neat. Just show you that again. Basically, I came here, I put it at count of 20, I hit send. Our other option is here. Simple as doing BIB. And you can see there, it's doing it, and it's doing it for the default 10 that we actually had in the code. So we've defined our own macro, and we're able to call in that macro. Okay, so now we have a macro, and we can call in that macro. How do we use that macro in our actual printer config? Let's go to machine. Let's go to printer config this time. And I'm gonna hit find. I've already modified this. I'm gonna go find Neo. And we have it here because it's including it. So we've included our Neo config. So basically our printer config is looking for that, which we already did. Okay. And then we want to look for BIB because that's the name of our macro. Oop. BIB. Oh, that's odd. It's not finding it. All right. So I know where it is. So in our printer start file, because that's where I put this, it calls out right here, BIB. So what is this going to do? So if we have a print start situation and we start a print, it's going to do G32, a G90, it's going to G1, it's going to do G1, moving away from the bed. It's going to do all things it would normally do to start a print. And once it gets to that point, it's going to run our macro. It's as simple as that. So at this point, if it was a print start, we could have it so maybe everything turns red, or maybe the nozzles turn white, so you have a nozzle camera and you can see what it's doing, but the logo on the front's red, or whatever color you want it to be. You could also do one for your print end, so that maybe the logo turns green, maybe your lights turn off. It's whatever you want to do. So let's take a look at what that looks like in actual practice. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get rid of this piece of paper because there's a better chance than not that that's going to mess with our quad gantry leveling. So let me go ahead and hit print start. And it's gonna go ahead and it's going to home itself on the X and Y. Just like what you expect. And now it's gonna home the Z. It's all part of that code, that print start code. Now it's going to do a quad gantry leveling. Hopefully it doesn't fail. Haven't really tuned this printer yet, so it could be hit or miss. All right, so it's getting better. Usually from a cold print, I tell people 3 times around is not abnormal. It's actually probably the most normal. Only took a couple times around that time. Okay, so it finishes QGL. So now it's going to home itself again, just like it should. And once it's done with that, it's going to do the macro that we have, the BIB macro. Just to make sure we can see that. Little piece of white paper there. Doesn't show up on camera that well. There we go. All right, so that was a quick video. How quick are we? We're at like 25 minutes or so to show Neopixels and camera settings in Klipper. Hopefully you found that educational. Hopefully it helped you out if you're having some troubles with that. This is not meant to be an in-depth video on either one of those 2 subjects. If there is a lot of interest in these particular subjects or one of these 2 subjects, let me know in the comments down below and we can expand on these things. So we'll continue with these shorter videos with subjects about Klipper and how they work on my particular printer. And if you are interested, again, let me know. If you're not interested, they're short videos. Skip right by it, go to the next one. I'll see you next time. Build a basement.